Red 2 standing by, all for lit, and in the green, welcome back to Goldeneye. Hopefully things go a little bit more smoothly than last time, but we've finally finished everything in St. Petersburg and are moving on to Cuba. We have to infiltrate the jungle, where our plane has been shot down after trying to find the Yanis base, and we will need to make our way there. We are reaching the end game. Cuba is the last of the game's main missions. We do get a couple of bonus ones for beating the game on higher difficulties. So, if we head out to the jungle, we will see that our objectives are to destroy all the drone guns, eliminate Xenia, and escort Natalia to the Yanis base. Apologies if things are a little bit croaky in terms of my voice. I'm not actually sick. I've just been dealing with hay fever and something's sort of been annoying me all week. So, satellite reconnaissance has been unable to locate any installation near the coordinates recovered from the Yanis computers in St. Petersburg. It seems likely that a ground search will be necessary. The CIA has provided you with a light aircraft. Underfly Yanis radar and parachute into the drop, proceed through the jungle, eliminating any opposition, and attempt to locate the Yanis base. Now, I think the plane is the same asset in terms of graphics as we saw in Runway. Miss Simonova will be with you on this mission. If Yanis is operating a Goldeneye satellite, her computing skills will be essential when you try to disable their systems. Jack Wade has given her some basic firearms training and he thinks she'll be able to carry her weight in a combat situation. Be careful though, 007. Remember, she isn't an experienced operative like yourself. It's worth noting that the guards will usually target you, and Natalia gets a Kruger Magnum, which is a very, very good weapon to have. You'll know you're on the right trail if you encounter Yanis troops or automated defences. Sorry, something's really gone wrong. Be especially wary of their robotic drone guns. I'm giving you some triggered mines for their ammo dump. Try not to waste them on silly things. Oh, and look out for that Xenia woman, 007. I think she's after you. You lucky devil. A hot date in the rainforest with 2 women. Shame on you, James. Over the 70 years of his literary and cinematic career, remember, Casino Royale was published on April 13th, 1953, so Bond as a character celebrated 70 years earlier this year at the time of recording. James Bond has travelled all over the world, met interesting people, and killed a lot of them. The travel itself has frequently been a focal part of the broader Bond universe. At the time the first novel was published, the austerity measures Britain was enduring meant most people holidayed in the home counties, as they were sometimes called. Ryanair and its ilk didn't exist, so the now common practice of flying to Spain in something which was tangentially related to comfort, in that they were once on the same continent, was just a pipe dream. Being able to travel via the page, to read about the far-off countries James Bond visited, was just as exciting as the beautiful women and delicious meals. It was all about the glamour and grandeur of Bond's world, a full-on fantasy for a beleaguered nation. Even a trip across the channel to France was something most people would not get to do with any frequency, so the setting of Casino Royale would have been fairly captivating despite being in Britain's effective neighbour. The town of Royale Les Eaux does not actually exist, but it has its own little history crafted by Ian Fleming. A popular tourist destination in the Second Empire period, 1852 to 1870, Royale was ultimately overshadowed by Le Touquet, apologies for pronunciation, and lost prominence until mineral water springs were discovered around the turn of the 20th century. Royale renamed itself Royale Les Eaux, I'm not sure how to pronounce the bit with the X on the end, and tried to get into the mineral water business, but this was short-lived due to legal action from major companies. It got by on tourism, fishing, and small profits from its casino until the late 40s, when said casino saw major investment and attention from big syndicates. Fleming did manage to provide contradictory sources for the town's location, though. It is stated as being near the mouth of the Somme, in the department of the same name, but a telegram sent to Bond from there gives a more southerly department, Seine-Inférieure. When Royale Les Eaux reappears in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, it appears to be situated closer to Le Touquet, in the department of Pas-de-Calais, north of the Somme. From the seeds planted by this rejuvenated casino in a fictional French town, mighty trees of adventure grew. While Moonraker stands out as the oddity of Fleming's novels, given it is set entirely in England, moving between London and Drax's launch site near Dover in Kent, an aspect which fans found disappointing at the time, it does so as an examination of British character and strength, along with the fears of the 1950s. It's somewhat introspective, and the close-to-home nature only helps. Otherwise, Bond is very much a globetrotter. Fleming has him travelling to the United States and Jamaica in Live and Let Die, the latter being a location the author knew well. Fleming's house Goldeneye is in Oricabessa, and he would spend 4 weeks holiday there each year, working on his next novel and following other pursuits such as swimming and snorkeling. Bond's own adventure in the US was also based on Fleming's travels, so the novel naturally featured a lot of detail. The key locations of New York City and St. Petersburg, Florida, had been part of Fleming's travels when visiting longtime friend Ivar Bryce. Bond would return to the US in Diamonds Are Forever, where he travels to New York again, Saratoga Springs and Las Vegas, Goldfinger, where he's in Miami initially after a mission in Mexico, then later spends time in New York City and Kentucky, and The Spy Who Loved Me, the location of which is the Dreamy Pines Motor Court in the Adirondack Mountains, inspired by an actual motel Fleming stayed at, and Bond returns to Jamaica in both Dr. No and The Man with the Golden Gun. Both novels featuring Jamaica have that as a primary or sole setting, with the fictional Crab Key being the site of Dr. No's lair. Diamonds Are Forever also starts and ends with the diamond smuggling pipeline in French Guinea. From Russia with Love does not actually see Bond visiting Russia, though Fleming had some knowledge of the country thanks to his journalism work. The trap itself is set in Turkey and is to be sprung aboard the Orient Express. Turkey is close enough to Europe to be relatable and far enough away to be considered exotic, especially with its myriad cultural influences, and the Orient Express is perhaps the world's most famous train journey. The original Orient Express actually ran a different route to the one we see in the novel and film, which was the Simplon Orient Express. The original ran from Istanbul through Bucharest, Vienna, Munich and Strasbourg en route to Paris, while the Simplon line had the start and end in the same places, but ran through Sofia, Belgrade, Venice, Milan and Lausanne. This line was so named as it ran through the Simplon tunnel underneath the Alps, which connected Brig in Switzerland with Domodossola in Italy. Goldfinger has a little more travel involved. Apart from the American locations mentioned above, Bond plays golf with Goldfinger and visits his residence in Reculver in Kent. Later on, Bond follows Goldfinger to Geneva in Switzerland with a bit of a European travelogue as the Aston Martin DB3 tails Goldfinger's Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. On being discovered there, Bond manages to trick Goldfinger into employing him, somehow, and the action heads to the American locations. For Your Eyes Only features several locations due to being a collection of short stories. From a View to a Kill has its action near Versailles and Saint-Germain in France. For Your Eyes Only focuses on Vermont, where von Hammerstein has his residence, though the Havelocks themselves live in Jamaica. Quantum of Solace is set after a dinner party in Nassau in the Bahamas. Risico focuses on Rome and Venice in Italy, and a location in Albania, and the Hildebrand Rarity is set in the waters of the Seychelles. Thunderball starts in England, with Bond being sent to a health farm called Shrublands. This is based on Enton Hall near Godalming, and Bond's own report is a modified version of Fleming's recent medical. The action moves to the Bahamas once more, where we get to see more of the area than just one room where a dinner party was held. There are plenty of underwater sequences as well, all well detailed as one expects. On Her Majesty's Secret Service takes us back to Royale Leo before sending Bond to Switzerland, where Blofeld has his lair at Piz Gloria. And yes, there is a real resort atop the mountain. The actual location was featured in the film. Bond also visits Geneva, meets Marc-Ange Draco in Marseille, and spends Christmas at N's house in Windsor, England. The ending of the novel is actually set in Germany. You Only Live Twice is something of a travelogue of Japan, once more based on Fleming's own travels and the research he undertook for thrilling cities. The latter trip lasted 3 days, but the journey in 1962 was much longer and served as the base for the novel. Bond spends time in Tokyo before travelling to the village near Blofeld's castle in the Fukuoka prefecture. The precise location of Kissy's village is never mentioned, but it is pretty obviously on the coast. Realistically, a castle like Blofeld's would never have been anywhere near the coast due to earthquakes and typhoons. After this, Octopussy and the Living Daylights had 3 different settings. The title stories are set in Jamaica and Berlin respectively, while The Property of a Lady is set entirely in London. Some additions include the short story 007 in New York, which, well, guess. I mentioned Fleming travelled extensively, so now would be a good time to bring up that travelogue work, Thrilling Cities. The book was informed by 2 major trips Fleming took: an all-expenses paid 5-week trip around the world in 1959, and a drive through Europe in 1960. The cities focused on in his writing were Hong Kong, Macau, Tokyo, Honolulu, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Hamburg, Berlin, Vienna, Geneva, Naples, and Monte Carlo. Originally appearing as newspaper articles, the accounts of each city visited were compiled into the book. During his time in Tokyo, Fleming worked with Richard Hughes, the Australian correspondent for the Sunday Times and inspiration for Dicko Henderson in You Only Live Twice. Each article is naturally informed by Fleming's own likes and dislikes and his personal preferences for hotels, restaurants and nightlife. Reviews were largely positive, though it was worth noting that the first trip wore at Fleming somewhat, leading to a much darker and less complimentary view of New York, the last destination on his trip. The short story 007 in New York was written as a kind of compensation. It is in this story that Bond reveals his, and by extension Fleming's, preferred recipe for scrambled eggs. Just a little side note. Fleming's own life experiences also informed a number of destinations, such as Bond having similar skiing experiences in Kitzbühel. This point is referenced in the short story Octopussy, as the man Major Smythe murdered in order to spirit away some Nazi gold happened to be Bond's former skiing instructor Hans Oberhauser. Some of Fleming's research for Diamonds Are Forever, including a meeting with the then head of MI5 Sir Percy Sillitoe, led to him working on another non-fiction piece, The Diamond Smugglers. The events detailed here may have been somewhat familiar to readers of Diamonds Are Forever, but the book was largely well received. Fleming's eye for detail, honed over years of journalist work, naturally painted wonderful pictures of these beautiful locations. However, for the most part, Bond's travel was generally limited to Europe and North America, with the occasional jet-set playground thrown in and a few trips to Fleming's holiday residence in Jamaica. Bond visits Africa once, rather briefly at the end of Diamonds Are Forever, goes no further south on the mainland Americas than Mexico, and his time there is summarised at the start of Goldfinger. He makes 2 trips to Asia. Turkey is largely counted as being in West Asia, though has a fair degree of European and Balkan influence, and never visits Australia. Other authors would expand the literary Bond's travels, and it's a long list. Colonel Sun is largely set in Athens in Varanasi and Greece, then John Gardner takes over but mostly sticks to what we know. So here goes. License Renewed takes Bond to Macaulay in Scotland and Perpignan in France. For Special Services returns to the US, though focusing on Texas and Louisiana. Icebreaker is primarily set in Finland but features Portugal and Libya, a smaller scene but Bond's second African locale. Roll of Honour uses Oxfordshire, Monte Carlo, and Geneva and Bern in Switzerland, along with Virginia in the US. Nobody Lives Forever features Belgium and Key West in Florida as major locations. Ireland, Hong Kong, only the third Asian trip, and Berlin are major settings in No Deals, Mr. Bond. Scorpius takes Bond to Hereford, Washington DC and South Carolina. Somerset, Naples, Lisbon, Portugal and Gibraltar feature prominently in Win, Lose or Die. Broken Claw is mostly set in North America, featuring scenes in Washington State, San Francisco and British Columbia, Canada. The Man from Barbarossa finally gives Bond an on-page visit to Russia, specifically Moscow, as his journey to Vladivostok and then Leningrad, in between You Only Live Twice and The Man with the Golden Gun, was unseen. Death is Forever has Bond visiting Paris, Calais, Frankfurt, Venice, and even the Channel Tunnel for the climax. Bond is back in Paris and also visits Milan for Never Send Flowers. Seafire is set in Cambridge, then locations in Spain and Puerto Rico, which is an unincorporated American territory in the Caribbean. And Cold takes Bond to Rome, Pisa, and Tuscany in Italy, then Washington DC, Virginia, and Iowa. When Raymond Benson took over, his stories continued to send Bond globetrotting. The short story Blast from the Past sends Bond back to New York City. 0-10 has some scenes in Jamaica but focuses on Hong Kong, with other locations being Macau, Taiwan, and for the first and only time Australia. The Facts of Death has key scenes in Athens and Cyprus, with Los Angeles and Tokyo also featuring. The short story Midsummer Night's Doom takes Bond back to Los Angeles, specifically the Playboy Mansion. High Time to Kill does not have a London scene, a rarity among the novels, but features the Bahamas, Morocco, India and Nepal, mostly the Himalayas. Double Shot is primarily set in Morocco and Gibraltar. Never Dream of Dying features Nice, Cannes, Paris, Monte Carlo and Corsica. And the major locations of The Man with the Red Tattoo are Tokyo and Naoshima. Live at 5, another short story, has no specified location. Of the post-Benson novels, Iran and Afghanistan are key locations in Devil May Care. Carte Blanche takes Bond to Serbia, South Africa, Sudan and the United Arab Emirates, which messes up the alliteration. Solo features Zimbabwe, the fictional nation of Zanzirim and Washington DC. Trigger Mortis takes us to Nuremberg in Germany and the famous Nürburgring, before heading to New York State and New York City. Forever and a Day has Bond visiting Nice, Marseille and numerous locations across the French Riviera. And finally, With a Mind to Kill features Leningrad and Berlin. That's the literary travelogue in a nutshell. The movies have usually kept pace with the novels, making a few modifications as needed. Not every location seen in the films is actually visited. A number of destinations are recreated at Pinewood Studios. No Bond travelogue is complete without referencing this. Located on the estate of Heatherton Hall, the buildings of Pinewood were built by Lieutenant Colonel Grant Morden in the early 20th century. In 1934, they came under the ownership of building tycoon Charles Booth, who teamed up with J. Arthur Rank to convert Pinewood into film studios. Operations commenced in 1936, and though the studios would be taken over by military film units during World War II, post-war Pinewood would be a key filming location for many notable pictures. The Rank organisation would struggle with budget issues throughout the 50s, but by the 60s, Pinewood was no longer solely dependent on Rank's films. In 1962, Eon Productions would begin filming parts of the James Bond movies there, and the association continues to this day. The Spectre training school at the beginning of From Russia with Love is filmed on Pinewood's grounds as one such example. Of course, as the series grew, so too did the need for spectacular stages. While a number of filming stages exist, the largest of these is the 007 stage, originally constructed for The Spy Who Loved Me and featuring one of the largest water tanks in Europe. Ken Adam oversaw its construction to house the massive set envisioned for the Liparus interior and ensured it would be a permanent stage as opposed to the temporary construction of the Volcano base. The 007 stage has been used for several other films, though it burned down in an accident during filming of Ridley Scott's movie Legend. It was rebuilt and then burned down again in an accident after filming for Casino Royale had been completed. It was rebuilt within 6 months, and then in 2019 the external walls were damaged in another accident while filming No Time to Die. The place has been through more wrecks than a villain's lair. And now onto the cinematic Bond's world travels. As in the books, MI6 headquarters in London is a key location, with London itself having greater prominence in The World Is Not Enough, Skyfall and Spectre. Dr. No mirrors the novel, keeping things fairly low budget, not that there was any other choice, and maintaining Jamaica and Crab Key as the settings. Location filming was mostly in Orica Bessa with other shots at Pinewood Studios. The majority of interior shots in the series are filmed at Pinewood, so there's not as much need to mention this. From Russia with Love keeps its major locations, though the scenes in Russia are moved to Turkey for convenience's sake and because Spectre is the main antagonist. Otherwise, location filming was primarily in Istanbul, with some smaller shots in Zagreb and Belgrade. The boat chase was filmed in Scotland and the rest at Pinewood. Goldfinger does show us the destruction of the Mexican refinery in the pre-title sequence, which was filmed at Esso's West London terminal. The scenes in Miami, England, Switzerland and Louisville, Kentucky, including Goldfinger's stud farm and Fort Knox, were all done on location, with Auric Enterprises being set at the Pilatus Aircraft HQ. RAF Northolt doubled for the airports. Much of Thunderball was filmed in the Bahamas, keeping in line with the novel's locations. Sites included the Coral Harbour Hotel, Love Beach, Rock Point and Stanhill Key, site of what is now known as Thunderball Grotto. The pre-title sequence and Spectre HQ exteriors were filmed in France, which is the site of Spectre's HQ in the novel, while Chalfont Park served as the site of Shrublands. RAF Waddington was the scene of the base from which the Vulcan was launched and hijacked. Again, keeping with the novel, much of You Only Live Twice was filmed in Japan. Key locations included Kobe Docks, Nakano Shimbashi Station, Himeji Castle, Seganto-ji at Nachi Falls, and Shinemoedake. Locations such as Cape Canaveral and the Pentagon were replicated, and the UN base was set at Magaro in Norway. On Her Majesty's Secret Service changed location from France to Portugal, possibly to avoid the use of Royal Leo, not really sure. Filming sites included Guncho Beach, Casino Estoril, and an estate named Haddadi de Zambujal. Sorry about the pronunciation. Otherwise, it maintained its scenes in Switzerland such as Piz Gloria, Lauterbrunnen, and towns such as Steckelberg and Grindelwald, and the College of Arms in London. Diamonds Are Forever has brief moments of globe-trotting in the pre-title sequence, including Tokyo, Cairo, and South Africa, while much of the film is set in Amsterdam and various locations around Las Vegas. Scenes in California were shot in Los Angeles, while the oil rig exteriors were filmed on a rig in Mexico. While Las Vegas was the key location in the book, Bond did go to other places, as I mentioned. For the first time in the film series, Live and Let Die showed us Bond's flat. Exterior shots were filmed in Chelsea, which is where Bond's flat is stated to be in the books. A number of aspects actually diverted from the novel. New York remained the first American location, with filming done on site. Kananga/Mr. Big's operations shifted location to Louisiana, with New Orleans as the main filming site. France served as the location for the fictional Caribbean nation of Saint Monique, and the Green Grotto Caves in Jamaica provided the site of Kananga's lair. The Man with the Golden Gun actually eschews Jamaica entirely, spending time in Far Eastern countries with a brief stopover in Beirut. After a scene in a Macau casino, Bond heads to Hong Kong's Kowloon Peninsula and visits locations such as the wreck of the Queen Elizabeth, an MI6 base, and the Peninsula Hong Kong Hotel. The remainder of the film heads to Thailand, filming around Bangkok and the island of Khao Phi Khan. After the spectacular ski sequence set in Austria, which opened The Spy Who Loved Me, the destination of choice is Egypt. Locations include Cairo, Luxor, and the pyramids at Giza. After this, location filming is done on the Costa Smeralda in Sardinia. Some scenes for the mission briefing were set at a Royal Navy submarine base in Faslane, Scotland, and the underwater action was filmed in the Bahamas. This movie's ambitious approach led to the 007 stage being created. As I said, Moonraker's pre-title sequence has no precise location, with Africa being the general vicinity of Bond's last mission. Otherwise, the film is a very long way off the purely English locations of the book. Location footage for the film focused on Drax's chateau in California, Venice, Rio de Janeiro, and the rivers of the Amazon. It would have been a little hard and expensive to actually send Bond into space, not to mention building the space station, so miniature work and special effects on well-crafted sets provided that location. Bond's journey in For Your Eyes Only starts out with the death of legally distinct Blofeld over London, before his meeting with Melina Havelock occurs in Spain. Further location filming was completed at Cortina d'Ampezzo in Italy, Corfu and St. Cyril's Monastery atop the Meteora in Greece, and the border of Greece and Albania. Naturally, it's very different from the book being set in Vermont by way of Ottawa. Octopussy again changes locations from the short story. Nothing is set in Jamaica for this film, and the short story itself is relegated to backstory details. Instead, the film's location shoots were Udaipur in Rajasthan, with special attention given to the Jagmandir Palace on Lake Pichola. Some of the film was set on a railway running between East and West Germany, but the Nene Valley Railway doubled for East Berlin and the train tracks. Otherwise, filming was undertaken in West Berlin. Some scenes were filmed in Utah as well, despite not being set there. I think that was the ending of the film. A View to a Kill does share a country with the short story's location, but otherwise is very different in location. The French scenes are set at Château de Chantilly and Paris, with filming done on location. San Francisco and its surrounds provided the other main setting of the film, with location shoots undertaken at Fisherman's Wharf, Dunsmuir House, San Francisco City Hall, and the Golden Gate Bridge. The mine entrance scenes were shot at Staines-upon-Thames, and the racecourse is indeed Ascot. The Living Daylights moves the action of the short story from the border of West and East Berlin to Bratislava, Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic. This is just the beginning of the film. The pre-title sequence was filmed on Gibraltar, and further Czech location filming was done in and near the border with Austria. Vienna even doubles for Bratislava. Bond then heads to Vienna proper, Tangier in Morocco, and, admittedly unwillingly, Afghanistan. Though the Mojave Desert and Morocco were used for the scenes in Afghanistan. The safe house scenes were filmed at Stonor House in Oxfordshire. With License to Kill being an original story, no location comparisons need to be made. The central location was the fictional Republic of Isthmus, and Mexico doubled for it. Key filming sites included the Biblioteca del Banco de Mexico, Casino Español, Villa Arabesque in Acapulco, La Rumorosa Mountain Pass, and Otomi Ceremonial Center in Temoaya. The Florida Keys also provided locations, with Hemingway House serving as Bond's meeting place with M. Other locations included 7 Mile Bridge and St. Mary's Star of the Sea Church. Florida locations also doubled for Bimini Islands and Cray Key in the Bahamas. Goldeneye starts in Arkhangelsk, Russia, with an entirely new set known as Leviston Studios being constructed. At the time, Pinewood had been reserved for First Night, starring Sean Connery as King Arthur. The bungee jump at the start was filmed at the Contra Dam in Switzerland. For the location shots in Monte Carlo, the French government actually cooperated by loaning the brand new Eurocopter Tiger and the Lafayette frigate. Exterior shots of MI6 are, from here on, its actual Vauxhall Cross headquarters. Leviston Studios was used for many interior shots and recreations of St. Petersburg, Bond's next destination. There was some difficulty filming there as crew members required bodyguards. A number of scenes in Russia were filmed in the UK, such as the Nene Valley Railway being used for scenes of Trevelyan's train. But St. Michael's Castle in Russia served as the location of the GRU archives. Finally, the scenes in Cuba were shot in Puerto Rico, including the use of the now decommissioned Arecibo Observatory. Tomorrow Never Dies opens in the Khyber Pass, actually Parasur Balatestas Airport in the Pyrenees. After scenes aboard a Royal Navy F-23 frigate, actually HMS Westminster, and at MI6 headquarters, Bond heads for Hamburg, though these scenes were actually filmed in the UK, including Brent Cross and Harmsworth Keys Printers Limited. Once the scenes in Hamburg are complete, Bond's destination is Vietnam. Filming was set to take place there, but the visas were cancelled and Bangkok was used as the shooting location. The hideout for Carver's stealth boat was Phang Nga Bay. The World Is Not Enough begins in Bilbao, Spain, with the action switching to London and then to Eilean Donan Castle in Scotland as a temporary MI6 HQ. Exterior shots were on location. The ski sequence set in the Caucasus was actually in Chamonix in France, while the casino in Baku, Azerbaijan was actually Halton House. Some sections of the Azerbaijan scenes were shot on location, but the Kazakhstan exterior shots were actually filmed in Spain, and the oil pipeline scenes were shot at different locations in the UK. Istanbul, the focus of the film's climax, once again had scenes shot on location, while the underwater scenes were filmed in the Bahamas. Die Another Day starts out in North Korea, a location in which it would naturally be difficult to film. The opening surf scene was shot in Maui, while the shore shots were mostly filmed in Cadiz in Cornwall. After the pre-title sequence and the prisoner exchange, Bond spends time in Hong Kong before returning to England. For a number of scenes here, the Reform Club was used as a shooting location. Scenes in Cuba were shot in Cadiz and La Caleta, Spain. For Iceland, Jökulsárlón, I think that's it, provided the key location of the ice chase, with additional footage filmed in Norway and England. Graves's diamond mine was represented by the Eden Project in Cornwall. A few shots were also blue screened, and it's a little, very obvious. Casino Royale eschews France entirely as a location, placing the titular casino in Montenegro. The Czech Republic was used for location shoots set there, and the opening sequence is set in Prague. Scenes in the Bahamas, Miami, Venice and Lake Como were shot on location, though some scenes were filmed in the UK. Dunsfold Aerodrome, the site of the Top Gear test track, served as Miami Airport, sadly no Stig cameo, and Millbrook Vehicle Proving Ground was where Bond's DBS flipped. The Madagascar scenes were shot in the Bahamas too. Quantum of Solace starts out in a similar location to where Casino Royale left off, set in Siella and Talamone. Shooting took place at a number of Italian locations, such as Malcesine and Limone sul Garda, with the scenes in Siena being filmed later on. Bond's other destinations are Port-au-Prince in Haiti, Bregenz in Austria, various places in Bolivia, and finally Kazan in Russia. Panama City and its surrounds doubled for locations in both Haiti and Bolivia, though some scenes for the latter were shot in Chilean locations such as Cobija and the Paranal Observatory. Kazan was represented by Brunewald Barracks in Aldershot. For Skyfall, many locations around London were used for the scenes set there. A fair portion of the film takes place in and around London. While the Bond family estate and Skyfall Manor is at Glencoe, keeping with the canon of the novels, the actual filming site was Hankley Common in Surrey. Scenes in Istanbul for the pre-title sequence were filmed on location. Some footage in Shanghai and Macau was shot on location, but scenes with the actual actors were filmed in London. The island Silver controls is the deserted Hashima Island. Spectre begins in Mexico City, which was filmed on location, albeit later in production. The next destinations outside London are St. Peter's Square in the Vatican and numerous places around Rome, such as the Ponte Sisto Bridge and the Roman Forum. Scenes in Austria were also filmed on location, with the area around Solden being the key focus, along with Lake Altalsee and Obertiliac. The concluding scenes were shot in London, locations including Westminster and Lambeth Bridges, before moving to Morocco, site of the film's climax. The ending does get a little bit dragged out going back to London, admittedly, for filming in Tangier and the Gara Medour crater. The facility exterior was inserted via CGI. Finally, No Time to Die starts out in Matera, Italy, filmed on location along with additional shoots in Sapri. Bond spends time in Port Antonio, Jamaica, before travelling to Santiago de Cuba and Norway, with the final showdown set in the Kuril Islands. Scenes in Norway were shot at Nittedal and the Atlantic Ocean Road, though some filming for this took place in the Cairngorms and Windsor Great Park. Scenes in Jamaica and Cuba were shot on location, with the Faroe Islands standing in for the disputed Kuril Islands, and locations such as Hammersmith and Whitehall provided the London scenes. And there you go, that's a bit of a teaser travelogue around the world of 007. Why not put a few of these on your destination list? Okay, maybe some of the less dangerous ones you can leave out, but honestly, the world of 007 is a really good start if you want a truly memorable holiday. What? That was a terrible run and I still got it! Okay, that's a thing that happened, I guess. Well, I'm pretty surprised about that, but basically the secret to success in that mission is kiting the guards, using the trees as cover and getting them to focus on you. Sometimes they can shoot Natalia, but if they're focused on you, they'll ignore her and she can gun them down with impunity. All you've got to do is survive against Xenia, eliminate the drone guns, and go straight up the ladder and then wait to shoot that drone gun rather than rushing. But there we go. Control's going to be next, and that's kind of tough. But our brand new cheat, hunting knives. So basically, let's sneak into the facility, which is a good place to demonstrate things. So it keeps bringing up the 2. We can't just use 1. I think I glitched out the game because I tested this out on the N64 original, and yes, you could bring up 1. So somehow I glitched out the game. But hunting knives. Essentially a glorified slap. With much more power. You have really crappy range. Sorry, Doc. But, and there's a guy slumping. Mate, not on the floor. At least use the cistern behind you. But yeah, hunting knives, pretty much just, as I said, more powerful slap. They're there for a bit of fun. They are quiet. They will provide efficient takedowns on occasion. If you want a stealth weapon, you can challenge yourself with hunting knives, but otherwise, they're really not that special. They're fun, which is essentially part of the Goldeneye experience, but they're really not that much. They will take out guards very quickly. Like, compare... Okay. Even a slap in the back of the neck takes a couple of tries. Now let's face an enemy front on. Assuming they don't crouch. See, that takes a lot to kill him. 1 knife and that's it. That one didn't even hit him. Dude, I know they set this up like a movie, but that's basically like the force kick. I missed that guy and he still died. Don't pad your part. But yeah, this is also getting to show off slow animation fairly well too. Oh, hello, there's a guy up there. But yeah, that is pretty much it for hunting knives. They are basically a more powerful slap. That's really, really it. Not a bad cheat, but not fantastic either. So, but on the bright side, we have actually dealt with jungle in a lot less time than I actually thought, even if, well, it was slow, but it didn't take me anywhere near as many attempts. Jungle just kind of sucks because it's rife with, well, it's kind of fake difficulty because the draw distance is so bad. You can't zoom in and see the enemies, and one of the problems is that when you zoom in to try and spot the drone guns, the in-game fog creates problems. Because 1, you can't really see the drone guns very effectively until they start firing, and number 2, the enemies have always worked on the principle of if they have a clear line of sight to you, they can shoot you. Sometimes they can even shoot through floors. But you sort of have to wander around incredibly paranoid, wondering if you're going to find the enemies and basically kiting them, getting Natalia to shoot them. It's difficult. But Natalia is sort of a means of balancing it. Anyway, that's got that done. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4. Silver PP7 is always going to be a point of disgrace because I just was not in the state of mind to actually deal with that. But I'm surprised this actually worked really well. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is Red 2, returning to base.